This morning I'm going to be reading to you from Matthew chapter 25, starting at verse 31. When the Son of Man comes in his glory and all the angels with him, he will sit on his glorious throne. All the nations will be gathered before him, and he will separate the people one from another, as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. He will put the sheep on his right hand and the goats on his left. Then the king will say to those on his right, "Come, you who are blessed by my Father, take your inheritance, the kingdom prepared for you since the creation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. I needed clothes, and you clothed me. I was ill, and you looked after me. I was in prison, and you came to visit me." Then the righteous will answer him, "Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink? When did we see you a stranger and invite you in, or needing clothes and clothe you? When did we see you ill or in prison and go to visit you?" The king will reply, "Truly I tell you, whatever you did for the least of one of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me."
Thank you, Jane. After taking a break last Sunday to consider what team, you remember what team stands for? No, okay.
Together.
Yep.
Everyone.
Yep.
Teams.
Yep. Right. Well done. You were listening. Excellent. Excellent. We continue today with building the team as we consider another of the spiritual gifts mentioned in the Bible. Today we look at hospitality. Peter 4, verses 8 to 11 read, "Above all, keep loving one another earnestly, since love covers a multitude of sins. Show hospitality to one another without grumbling. As each has received a gift, use it to serve one another, as good stewards of God's varied grace. Whoever speaks as one who speaks oracles of God, whoever serves as one who serves by the strength that God supplies, in order that in everything God may be glorified through Jesus Christ. To him belong glory and dominion forever and ever. Amen." Hospitality. What is hospitality? Be interesting to run a survey around this congregation and find out what your thoughts about hospitality are. Perhaps it's easier actually to say what hospitality is not, or not necessarily. It's not providing a gourmet meal for your friends. It is not an occasion to impress your mates with your amazing furniture in your house, or your beautiful garden, or your new car. It's not something you do to repay someone who's given you a lovely evening the previous week. It's not something to make us feel good. Don't misunderstand me. Let me clarify, there's nothing wrong in any of those things. All of those are laudable and worthwhile. They are useful in developing and growing relationships, deepening understanding and friendships. but I believe they go only part way to understanding what hospitality means in Bible terms. Some say that Anne and I are good at hospitality, whatever that means, but are we? I hope we'll explore exactly what we mean by hospitality over the next few minutes. So what constitutes hospitality? Perhaps the clue is in the root of that word, hospital. Why do people go to hospital? Because they are ill, because they need treatment for some ailment, because they need care and attention, be it physical or mental. Do you recall when Jesus challenged the Pharisees as to why he ate with tax collectors and sinners? Jesus replied, "It is not the healthy who need a doctor, but the sick. But go and learn what this means. I desire mercy, not sacrifice. For I have come not to call the righteous, but sinners." That's Matthew 9, verses 12 and 13. James says in chapter 1 and verse 27, "Religion that is pure and undefiled before God the Father is this, to visit orphans and widows in their affliction, and to keep oneself unstained from the world." Hospitality is love in action. Yes, hospitality does occur within the walls of the church, but it starts in the hearts of us all as we consistently share in a practical way the love of Christ in our community. We show our love for our friends, neighbours, strangers in the things that we do and say. Jesus told us to love our neighbours as we love ourselves. He even told us to love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, that you may be children of your Father in heaven. Matthew 5, 44, 45. Hospitality is love in action. Hospitality is relational. We demonstrate hospitality by extending love outside of this congregation as we get to know the people who make up our communities, as we learn of their joys and their challenges. John Wesley stressed the need for Christians not simply to donate to those in need, but to visit and get to know them. He wrote, "One great reason why the rich in general have so little sympathy for the poor is because they so seldom visit them. Hence it is that, according to the common observation, one part of the world does not know what the other suffers." Wise words for us to think about. So hospitality is love in action, it's relational, but it's also adaptable. Few of us embrace change with open arms. We have our routines and our idiosyncrasies because they're safe. We know how to cope in those situations, circumstances which are within our comfort zones. As we fully apply love and relationship to those outside of the church community, we will discover again and recognize again that people have different views, different standards, different forms of language, different outlooks, different problems. And as we beacon move forward with developing some of the programs that we're planning for this building, we will need to be adaptable. People will come here and they will challenge our thinking and our ways of doing things. Surprise, surprise, I might as well do something like you did this morning. I'm not going to sing 9 to 5. But surprise, surprise, Jesus did not wait for the crowds to come and hear him speaking in the synagogue. He went to them on the hillside, along the roadside, in the houses of tax collectors and sinners. Isaiah puts it this way when talking about the Israelites, when taking the Israelites to task about what they did in the times they claimed to be fasting. Isaiah 58 verse 3, "Yet on the day of your fasting you do as you please and exploit all your workers. Your fasting ends up in quarrelling and strife and in striking each other with wicked fists." And then he continues in verse 6, "Is not the kind of fasting I have chosen to loose the chains of injustice and untie the cords of the yoke, to set the oppressed free and break every yoke? Is it not to share your food with the hungry and to provide the poor wanderer with shelter? And when you see the naked, to clothe them and not to turn away from your own flesh and blood? Then your light will break forth like the dawn, and your healing will quickly appear. Then your righteousness will go before you, and the glory of the Lord will be your rear guard. Then you will call, and the Lord will answer. You will cry for help, and he will say, 'Here am I.'" I've been very challenged in recent days to witness on television the pictures of the generosity of the Polish and Moldovan people in particular in offering hospitality. People who have come forward in droves to take in refugees from Ukraine, to offer them a place of safety, of sanctuary, to offer them love, shelter, food, clothing, to open their homes to people they don't know, and presumably for an unknown period of time. In some cases, not just one person, nor even a family, but several families, not knowing the habits of those families, the behavior of the children, and so on. That, friends, is hospitality. That is an outpouring of love for those in need. That shows a willingness to build relationships with people we've never met before. That shows adaptability, which is to be admired. I said earlier that some say that Anne and I are good at hospitality. Yes, we have had people to stay in our home at short notice, people in desperate need at that time, but only people we've known or had some knowledge of. Yes, we have housed a family of 6 for 6 months when they returned from almost destitute from a period abroad. But they'd been known to us as a family before they went away from the UK 10 years earlier. And yes, those 6 months were really tough and trying. These are examples of offering hospitality in the past. And yes, Anne is a brilliant cook. She won't like me saying this, she sat over there, but she is. And provides great meals for those who visit our home. But would we respond, or perhaps how would we respond, to the government's invitation to offer a Ukrainian family a place in our home right now. I know now there's perhaps a financial incentive to do so. But when I first thought about this, that wasn't on the table. I don't know how I shall respond. And yet that surely would be a true response in line with the spiritual gift of hospitality. May I remind you of an event that took place as two guys walked along a road from Jerusalem to Emmaus? You remember they were joined by this stranger who talked with them as they journeyed along. Although they didn't have to, the two men invited that stranger to join them for a meal. And that's when their eyes were opened and they recognized Jesus. God's two greatest commandments are to love God and to love others. To love everyone equally is a true sign of our love for God and our desire to live Christ-like lives. Jane read that passage from Matthew 25. It includes Jesus' words, "Truly, I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these, my brothers and sisters, you did for me." Jesus tells us to serve him or not by the way we choose to serve other people. Our love for, our obedience to Christ is shown in our love in action or not. And as you know, in that story, Jesus describes two scenarios. What we do or we don't do for others, we do for him personally. Luke 14, verse 12 and onwards. Then Jesus said to his host, "When you give a luncheon or dinner, do not invite your friends, your brothers or sisters, your relatives, or your rich neighbors. If you do, they may invite you back, and so you'll be repaid. But when you give a banquet, invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, the blind, and you will be blessed. Although they cannot repay you, you will be repaid at the resurrection of the righteous." Hospitality is love in action. It is relational. It is adaptable. Success, productivity, efficiency are found nowhere in the lists of spiritual gifts. But spiritual gifts such as hospitality are character building and help develop our faithfulness and our obedience. Biblical, spirit-filled hospitality is a vital ingredient in our Christian armory. Let's take it seriously.